Welcome to Aiken Business Matters, and I am so happy today. I've got a very good friend and business associate that I've worked with for a number of years, Charles Hart. We call him Charlie Hart, and he is Mr. Dunkin' Donut for Aiken County. I tell you, Charlie has 3 locations, one on Whiskey Road, one on Richland Avenue, and a newest one in North Augusta, South Carolina. So, Charlie, welcome to the program.
Thank you, John, so much for having me, and congratulations on your appointment as Business Vitality Manager. I can tell you that the small business people in the area are excited to have you on board.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Charlie. I know a lot about you, but most of our visitors and guests don't. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and how you ended up in Aiken.
Well, thanks, John. I actually got to Aiken via the golf business.
Okay.
Got out of college and was never a very good golfer, but worked in the restaurant business for a little while and somehow migrated into the private country club business. And I worked for Arnold Palmer for a number of years. Really got to Aiken through Woodside Plantation Country Club and worked there for 6 years as the general manager. Then it was time to make a change, and my wife and I, who I met here in Aiken, she's a North Augusta native, decided that we wanted to stay here in Aiken, and I've been very, very happy ever since.
Well, I tell you, we're glad you're here. I can't let this go by without asking the question. I don't think I've ever asked you this, but one of my heroes growing up was Arnold Palmer. Tell me how it was working for a business that Arnold ran.
Yeah, it was really neat because everything they say about Arnold, that he was the king of golf, he's the nicest guy in the world, are all true. He was a super guy. I've had several occasions where we've had him come in for events. He'd fly his own helicopter in. We'd get him in. He'd do a speech, and we had very tight timelines where we had to get him back on the helicopter and back to where he needed to be. And he just loved talking to the people and kissing babies and shaking hands. And that was probably the most difficult part of the job was keeping him on schedule. But he was a super, super guy.
Well, it's one of my fondest memories. You always wonder about famous people you met, and I know you've met a number of famous people as you've worked around the world, actually. But I was over at the Augusta National, probably maybe the first or second time I went to the Masters, and we were over in the Amen corner, right at one of the tee boxes, and I guess I was probably standing where I shouldn't be, and I had somebody just gently tap me on the shoulder, and they say, "Excuse me, son, I need to get through here." And it was Arnold Palmer. He just looked at me. He was as kind and nice and smiled and just kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Thank you." And I said, wow,
Well, that doesn't surprise me. He and his wife were just super, super people, and it was a pleasure working for them.
Well, Charlie, how did you get into the food business, really?
Out of college, I worked for a company called Bennigan's, which had a strong management training program, and I did that in my early 20s and woke up one day and I was getting out of work at 4 o'clock in the morning and said, this is a young man's game and don't think I could do this forever. And through just some people I knew, I got an offer to work at a country club and fell in love with it. And what a great place to go to work every day. It's beautiful. You get to deal with some super people. You're doing something different every day. It's not just food and beverage. It's golf, it's tennis, it's membership. I had free golf lessons and free equipment, and I never became a very good golfer. I can eat and drink with the best of them, but golf never really grew on me, but I enjoyed the business very much.
Well, just being around you and working with you in Aiken, I was thinking the other day, when the first time I met you was when you opened your Richland Avenue store, which was your first franchise. And what year was that?
That was 2009, right when everything in business was going to hell.
Yes.
And so it was actually right at the point where rents were very high, and so we paid too much for rent probably at the time, although our landlord, Tad Barber, is a super, super guy and has treated us very well. Money was tight at the time. The banks were all experiencing significant problems, and I'd run businesses for other people all my life, and I was very comfortable running a business. But it was one of those deals. I worked for a major corporation where they would say, this is your property, here's your bank account, go do it. I sort of never figured out the part of getting the money to begin with. So I had a financial partner in my brother, but to go out and borrow money was a eye-opening experience, and that's really probably the biggest struggle for many, many small business people.
Well, Dunkin is a franchise that you that you're involved with. Most people really don't understand, I think, what a franchise is about. Could you kind of give us a layman's definition of what a franchise is like?
It's certainly a different animal. You are married to the brand, and it is much like marriage. There's good parts and bad parts, and it's not a fit for everybody. And I'm always open to talking to people thinking about getting in a franchise business. I am not the most creative guy in the world, and my wife, Kitsy, will tell you that. But I do enjoy running a business. I enjoy hiring employees, training them, fine-tuning operations. I'm not the guy to go out there and create the next breakfast sandwich and create a marketing innovation to get that out. That's just not me. I enjoy operating, and I enjoy interacting with the community. And so it's been a perfect fit for me. Dunkin does all my advertising. They come out with new products, but they're very good about leaving you to interact with the community and make that Dunkin Aiken's Dunkin or North Augusta's Dunkin.
Right. You mentioned a couple of things about Dunkin and the things that they bring to the table. What particularly drew you to Dunkin as a corporation?
Well, I'm from Boston, and
Right.
my brother, who's my financial partner, is from Boston, and that's where Dunkin started. So we were very comfortable with the brand. And then when we looked at the franchise world, Dunkin' A was highly rated, one of the most successful franchisors that are out there. And it was our theory that Dunkin' filled a niche of really good coffee, and we're the blue collar man's coffee and donuts and breakfast sandwiches. We see a lot of other chains out there that are the new hot sandwich in town or the new burger in town, and there's always somebody on the horizon getting ready to take over that spot. With breakfast, we felt that was a small enough market segment that we could control that a little bit more. Obviously, we've got some competition in town with Starbucks, but competition's good for the soul.
Right. Well, I will say this. I want to thank you so much for bringing a little sample there. Thank you. And just as good as it always is. And when we moved back, when my wife and I moved back to Aiken, I was disappointed that I went for my not for Starbucks, but for the Dunkin', and I ran into, there was a Starbucks, but I'm not a big Starbucks fan. I enjoy the donut part of Dunkin' as well, as you can tell, and the coffee is always really, really good. And I've enjoyed the fact that you've opened up and that you have 2 locations here in Aiken and 1 in North Augusta. The one that you have on Whiskey Road is kind of a unique, I don't know if it is unique in the Dunkin' world, but you've got 2 franchises in there, don't you?
We do. We have Dunkin' Donuts and Baskin Robbins, which is our sister brand. Baskin Robbins is owned by Dunkin' Donuts, and we call those combo stores, where you have 2 sort of separate business entities in one, and they're very complementary brands. Dunkin' is morning, Baskin's is geared towards the afternoon. Dunkin' is more winter with the cold weather. Baskin's more summer with the hot weather. So they work very well together, and we're pleased to have both of those brands that are building.
Well, those are brands that I grew up with, both of these brands, and so it's kind of neat to have both of them in one location. And you offer some really unique things on the Baskin Robbins side. I know during the different holiday seasons you have, I remember at Thanksgiving you had a turkey cake, ice cream
cake. Mm-hmm. People seem to love that, and that's sort of interesting to show up at a family gathering with.
Yeah, and then for birthdays you have the birthday cakes, ice cream cakes there, and my favorite is milkshakes, and you certainly have those, and just all kinds of things that are associated with ice cream. I think most people that know me know that the 2 things that I love most are coffee and ice cream. So you fit the bill for me right there.
The 2 major food groups for you.
The other draw that you have on the Richland Avenue side is a nice benefit to the public, and that you have a meeting room area right adjacent to the service area, where people can come in, get their coffee, and have little meetings. And I know that quite a few of the business people meet clients in there over the week. If I'm in there, I'll see a dozen people that I know that are in the business community that'll be in there meeting people or just stopping by for their coffee fix for the day?
Yeah, we do. We have that room that's sort of a separate. We can close the door if people would like to for a business, and it's nice. Obviously, we offer free Wi-Fi at all of our locations. Right. The other neat thing we do in that room is we do children's birthday parties, where somebody will bring their kid and their friends in, and it could sort of mess up our facility instead of doing that at home. But we give each kid a half a dozen donuts and some frosting, and they frost it and put sprinkles on it, bring it home and show mom and dad. So it's kind of neat. Then we take them back in the kitchen and show them what a commercial operation looks like. We also do that with several schools in the area that have asked us to take some kids in the back and show them what the back of the house of a business looks like. And we show them what a walk-in freezer looks like at -10 degrees and how unpleasant that is. Yeah. But they seem to enjoy that.
Yeah. Let me ask you something. When you got into this franchise that we call Dunkin, what kind of training did you get? Because it's not an easy operation. I mean, it's a pretty complex with all the different things. You've got your breakfast sandwiches, your sandwiches that you serve all day long. You've got a zillion kind of donuts. And what was it that I saw the other week? I didn't get one, but I was told that they were absolutely great, and that was glazed with bacon.
Bacon donuts,
yeah.
Yes. And that's every once in a while, Dunkin' lets us have a little creativity. I was watching the Food Channel at home, and there was a little independent shop making bacon donuts, and I said, well, I love me some bacon. So we tried that over the weekend. It worked out pretty well. But as far as training that Dunkin' gives you, they'll do what they can. You go away for about a month. For example, with Basque, I learned how to make an ice cream cake.
Wow.
I'm not creative, and so I was for sure that I was going to fail that program, and I passed it, but I have not made one since, thank God. Have qualified employees that do that. I would caution anybody that wants to get into especially the food franchise business, that having experience at it really helps out, because there's only so much that a franchisor can teach you in the several weeks that they have. They're helpful, but there's nothing beats getting the experience on somebody else's dime.
Yep. I just got to ask you this. Did they teach you how to scoop the ice cream? There's got to be an art to it. Because
there's 3 different ways of dipping. There's the S dip and the circle dip, and I forget the other dip. But yeah, they break it down pretty well.
It's just amazing to me when you get one. It just looks like it came right out of it's photogenic, I guess is the word for it. They look like they just came out of the catalog.
Well, that's what we hope to do. And every once in a while, you get one that's a little colder than the rest, and it can be a little bit of a work. Yep.
Charles, let me ask you another question. Dealing with the franchise world, the food preparation and the thing, but good employees are always a challenge to find people that fit I guess profile for what you have as an owner and a manager, that you pick, the guidelines that Dunkin' puts out that you have to follow. So I guess the selection process is probably pretty difficult sometimes.
It is, and it's getting more difficult now as unemployment seems to be coming down. Right. There's fewer and fewer people out there in the pool. And I think what it comes down, we've all looked at the studies of what is most important to employees, and pay is not number 1. Pay is usually number 3 or number 4.
Really?
It is consistently over decades. And number 1 and 2 is the relationship you have with your coworkers and your managers, and do you feel appreciated? And that's sort of my philosophy on how to take care of my employees. I try to get to know them each personally. We have recognition systems in place. It's important that we treat them individually. The law tells you have to treat everybody the same. Mm-hmm. But I had a great teacher when I worked for Club Corp, which owned Woodside. He said, treat every member the same by treating each one differently. And that's sometimes hard to get your head wrapped around, but the rules apply to everybody, but everybody's an individual, and everybody's motivated by something different. And right. If you can get to know your employees, who their kids are and when their birthdays are and those types of things, that trumps a lot of other items. And I'll give you for example. One of my managers came to me several days ago, and her parents were coming to town, and they were going to spend a week here. She's from the Boston area, and wanted to know if she could take a few days off. She said, I know I don't have any vacation accrued. I said, well, that's fine. Don't worry about it. Just, you work for me. We're going to pay in, and all I ask is you bring your parents by. I'd love to meet them.
Wow.
So when you're a small employer, you can do those kinds of things. If you're the Walmarts of the world, you have very little wiggle room.
It kind of goes back to relationships. If you have that kind of relationship with your staff, with your employees, that kind of trickles out to the public that they serve too, doesn't it?
Well, you hope so. The philosophy is that if your employees are having fun at work, A, they'll enjoy their job,
right.
They're going to stick around longer, and B, that will bleed over into your customers, and your customers will enjoy being there. Again, one of my philosophies is I'd rather have very much long-term employees, pay them a little bit more rather than a revolving door.
Right.
Obviously, there's always going to be some of that, but we really, really try to minimize that.
Yeah, I've noticed that you have there's a core at your locations that have been there for a long time. And it's kind of nice when they're in their work, and even some of the new ones, they get to know the customer base. I can hear them. They may not remember the name of the person, but they kind of know what they're looking for, because I've heard them say, would you like your, whatever it is that they normally get. I know when I come in the door that depending on who's working in there, they've usually got my coffee waiting on by the time I go from the door up to the register.
They certainly know John McMichael's is large coffee with cream and sugar.
You got it.
Senator Ryberg comes to our Richland Ave store just about every day, and when he hits the drive-through, they recognize his name and they know exactly what he wants.
And I know our mayor's the same way too. They know exactly what he wants. That's kind of a nice thing. I think people like to feel that recognition, and even if they don't know who they are by name, or even if they're a new customer, just having that warm, friendly feeling of people that are in there, and that the people that are behind the counter are as happy to be in there as the people that are coming in to be served.
They are, and I can tell you that's one of the selling points that I use when I'm hiring individuals and recruiting people. So I let them know that, especially Monday through Friday, you're going to see the same customer every morning. You're going to get to know that customer. They're going to get to know you and your name. That we're a little bit different from most other QSRs, quick service restaurants, where they've got sort of different people coming and going all the time. We have a very steady clientele.
Well, I know you've had a number of folks that have worked in there, and that I've known over the years that were working there and saving money to go to college, and then they've stopped and they've gone to different universities around the state and out of the state. But I always thought that was kind of a neat thing that you offer an opportunity for young people to, have that time to save to further their education, and I've heard you talk about it. I know you encourage that too.
Absolutely. We hate to lose people, but we love to lose them when it's to go on to something bigger and better, whether it's higher education or a full-time career job. That's super, and when they are going to school, we make every effort to give them hours during Christmas vacations and summertime off, and those are great employees.
Well, Dunkin' Donut that I remember growing up with is quite different than the Dunkin' today. The technology that you have that is in place, the different varieties, and what's the new kind of donut now? It's the cross between a croissant and a donut. What is that?
It's a croissant donut is what they call it. I think the original term was trademarked, so they couldn't use that.
Right.
But it is. It's basically a croissant. It's injected with some filling and then frosted. And I won't go into how many calories are on them, but it's out there in plain view thanks to the Affordable Care Act. We just got brand new menu boards yesterday.
Oh, wow.
Which was required by law for everybody. Dunkin' has gone into many, many different things. For example, iced coffee we introduced into the South several years ago. In it now, we sell just as much iced coffee as we do hot coffee. One of the new technologies we're coming out with is on-the-go ordering, and that's going to become available sometime in the next several months, where you'll get an app on your smartphone, and you'll be able to save different items in there. John McMichael has his large coffee with cream and sugar, and you'll punch that in, and so you'll know the order was sent. And then your phone will remind you when you get within a mile of the store, do you want them to make it? You hit a button, you come into the store, and we'll have it for you. Come through the drive-thru. It's ready-made. It's already been paid for through your perks, which is our loyalty program. So you earn rewards on that also. It's going to be really neat.
Well, it does sound great, and that was. You must have read my questions, because that was one of the next questions I was going to say. How's technology really changing the face of of what you do on a day-to-day basis, and that's certainly it.
Well, I'm an old guy like you, and
Yeah.
I struggle to keep up with technology, and that's one of the challenges of a small business. We don't have a large company headquarters that helps us understand how technology changes and how to keep up with computers. I do rely heavily on the chamber for that and for SCORE. They put on some fantastic workshops that I think I'm going to one this week about how to sell your business. I'm not planning on selling anytime soon, but I'd like to know what the process is.
There you go.
So down the road, I won't be surprised.
Well, you've gone into an area that I wanted to explore a little bit more too. I know that you are the chair-elect for the Greater Aiken Chamber of Commerce for the year 2017, and you have been on the executive board now for what? Is this your third year?
3 years.
Yeah. So tell me how you're preparing for your tenure as chairman of Greater Aiken Chamber of Commerce.
Well, I think preparing is just kind of doing what I'm doing now and working with David Jameson and Fran Jones, who is now the current chair, and Bart Blackwell, who was the chair last year. They're super people who really put a lot into the chamber and believe in its mission. It's a fantastic organization that is really working hand in hand with the city and the county to specifically make business life improve in Aiken and Aiken County. I think through our Blue Ribbon Committee, we've shown that Aiken hasn't grown the last several years, and that's something to be concerned about. You know the old saying is either grow or go in the other direction. And so I think taking a proactive approach, which is part of your position, is much wiser than to just sort of sit back and see what happens. So at the chamber, we're doing that.
Yeah. Do you see a change in attitude in business today in Aiken? Do you see a more positive outlook?
I do. I think the economy's getting a little bit better. I don't think it's anywhere near where anybody wants it to be. I think that I see local business people excited. They've seen what's happened in North Augusta. They've got several large projects going on, and they're very well planned out. And I think they see the beginnings of that in Aiken. I think they see a can-do attitude from our city officials and our city employees, on our county employees. It seems to me like everybody's in the same boat, rowing in the same direction. So that's exciting to me.
Now, Charlie, I've heard you say this in some meetings that it's an exciting time because we've got a new city manager, we've got a new mayor, we've got a new head of Aiken Regional, we've got a new school superintendent. I mean, there are a lot of really positive things, and all these people that I've just mentioned and that you have almost a day-to-day connection with, they're all visionary type people that see great things ahead for Aiken. And you and I both were part of the aspirational cities tour that the chamber sponsored, and that so many city officials, education officials, county officials, and business community was involved in. Tell us a little bit about what you came away from that aspirational cities tour.
It was a great trip, and I think part of it was what we saw, and part of it was, frankly, sitting on a bus for 3 or 4 hours with somebody that you see in meetings, and then boof, you're gone off to your next project, and just having time to chat and learn about them personally, and learn about maybe their philosophy, and just delve a little bit deeper than you can in a 30 or 60-minute meeting. But like you said, we do have 4 dynamic individuals that you've named that I congratulate those that were on the search committees, that I think we've come up with people that have vision, and vision is a rare component. That is not an easy thing to have. I think what came out of our trip, the aspirational trip, was the 2 things that I came away with. Public-private partnerships seem to work very well, and we see an example of that over in Evans that they announced yesterday, right? And the other is mixed-use communities. For example, downtown Aiken, where we have residential, we need to have retail, we need to have business, and some government input. And I think if we can combine all those things with open space, and again, it takes some vision on our elected officials and our other folks in our city, our leaders. But I really feel like we're going in the right direction with that.
Yeah, Charlie is business. You have social media. I know that you have Facebook pages, I'm sure, and things like that. How do you network your business?
Social media, I'm a bit of a dinosaur. I try to do it, and I don't get it all the time. What we try to do is, Dunkin does our national advertising for us, and we pay them a pretty large royalty fee to do that, and I think they do a fair job at it. It's an expensive process. But to me, it's all about the local community. And I had told you a while back that when I first got into Dunkin, I actually had the opportunity to take over the Augusta territory. And my wife and I have both lived in Aiken for a number of years. And it was financially, it was more attractive than coming to Aiken because there's more people, rents were lower. But we decided, no, we wanted to be in a community that we want to be a part of. And we love Aiken. Certainly I've moved enough to know, I think I have a very good perspective on what makes a great community, and this is one. And
well, you've been on the East Coast, the West Coast,
overseas,
and in between, and overseas.
Right. So we decided to stay here in Aiken, and part of our philosophy is obviously giving back to the community, and I think that's the best use of my marketing dollars, not necessarily advertising, but whether it's, I'm very involved with Wounded Warriors, doing stuff with them. We're involved with USC, some of their fundraisers, golf tournaments. I sit on the Aiken Tech board. We do some things with them. We do things with the schools. So the great thing about Aiken is every day you'll have somebody coming in your front door with an event going on, and they'd like you to partner with them.
Right.
That's the wonderful thing. That on the downside is you can't say yes to everybody. But there is a plethora of opportunities to get involved, and we try to do as many as we can. Yeah.
One thing I really do commend you for is that you are out there in the community, you are engaged, and you are involved in many, many different fundraisers that, and I think most people that have sat in your chair that we've interviewed kind of said that too, that Aiken is a very unique city that so many people want to do so many good things for people that are in need. And where there's working towards our veterans, and I certainly that's forefront right now with the Wounded Warriors. That's a great program, a great project with some great results that we've seen.
It sure is.
And you mentioned our school systems, and we certainly want to make sure that we give back to our school systems, and having a new superintendent has really been a big plus for us. New buildings that are going up there, all these are just great things, but they really do speak to the business community, because you're a great example of what many of our small businesses do in Aiken, and that's give back to the community.
And most of them do. I think we have a super community because of that.
We do. I think when there's a need mentioned, that is taken care of. I remember several years ago at one of our first Friday breakfasts, there was a particular need mentioned here in Aiken, and one of the speakers mentioned it. And before the next hour elapsed after we adjourned our meeting, David Jameson sent a memo out to, or email out to everybody that that need had been met.
Yeah, I think that was gift cards for teachers, wasn't it?
It was. And so it's just great to know that when there's a need, that the business community steps up and they do the right thing.
And there's some of our very successful retirees have been super at getting involved once they've become here, and they've taken their talents. And there's so many good organizations here in Aiken, and it's really a wonderful place.
Charlie, I know you're involved in a number of different organizations. Are there any other groups that you're a part of that you use to market or mentor or help people?
I have, I've done some work with South Carolina Works, where they've taken some disadvantaged folks and some challenged folks and try to get them into the workforce. And what I've done with them is I've actually hired a couple of them. I've gone over and done some mock interviews, and the instructors there like it when I do those, because I can say things that they can't.
Right.
I give them the hard truth of, tattoos and piercings, that if you're going to be in the customer eye, you need to think twice about those things if you want to make a living. One of the other groups I'm involved with is B&I, Business Networking International, which meets every Thursday at 11:30 at Woodside. And it's a group of 25 or 30 business people that get together weekly for very much of a structured conversation. They talk about their businesses and the needs that they have, and it is great for small business people to extend your marketing presence and have those people market for you. And I'll give you a great example. One of our members was a roofer, and
Okay.
you know, sometimes people struggle when they're getting a roofer. There's some perceptions out there, and,
Right.
and I mentioned to my neighbor that this is a guy that I sit next to him every day and for lunch every week, and if he doesn't do you right, well,
You know where to get him.
I know where to get him, and it's been great for his business.
Yeah. Well, Charlie, I tell you, I think people know a little bit more about what the franchise business is all about, food preparation, and the technology that is slowly coming into the different businesses out there. I say slowly, probably feels pretty fast to you.
It does.
But thank you for what you do for the community. We look forward to what you'll bring to the chamber when you take over in 2017. But I know you're actively working right now with Fran to create those business opportunities for Aiken. Thank you for what you bring to the community. Thank you for giving back, and we thank you for being our guest today.
Thank you, John. I've enjoyed it.
And thank you so much for the coffee.
Cheers.
We hope that you'll be with us again next week for Aiken Business Matters. And thank you. If you have any suggestions for programs you'd like to see, just give me a call or email me with your suggestions. And again, thank you for joining us for Aiken Business Matters.